Big weekend for Nebraska baseball. Huge.
Yes, it is huge. It's a 20-round draft this year, which is up from 5 last year in the pandemic, and forever it's been 40 rounds. So it's still half of what it has traditionally been over the years. There's one thing we know about the draft this week, and that's that Spencer Schwellenbach's going to be a high draft pick. He could be Nebraska's highest draft pick in the Big Ten era if he goes in the first round or early in the second round. Ryan Bolt, an outfielder from 2016, has that honor right now. He went pick 53, I think it was, back in the day. So, that's the one thing that we know. Schwellenbach, he actually has 2 more years of college eligibility, but he's going to make a lot of money in the pros. Really, the question with him is, will it be as a pitcher, as a shortstop, or as both? And that's going to depend on which team takes him and how they project him, because a lot of teams have seen him different ways. So he'll be the first guy to go. That could happen Sunday night in the first round, or probably more likely Monday afternoon in the second round. Beyond that, though, I really, people have asked me, how do I think Nebraska baseball is going to do next year? And I think a lot of that's going to depend on how things go this weekend. I mean, Cade Povich, who's been their Friday night guy, I think he's a 50-50 proposition to be drafted and to potentially leave. What's interesting about him is that he has 2 more years of college eligibility as well. And so typically, if somebody wants to go pro and they feel strongly about it, they can do that with 1 year of eligibility left, so they have some bargaining power in the negotiations. Because of the pandemic year, Povich can actually come back next year, improve his stock, and still have that leverage. So I personally feel like he'll be back next year, but it's going to be interesting. Just takes one team to believe in you. And so,
what does believe in you mean to you? Like what numerical number is that? What round, what pick, or is it just money?
Well, I mean, it's different for everybody, whatever your standard is. But I think what Nebraska coaches tell their players that makes a lot of sense is, don't get caught up in the dream, because these guys on the pro side see this as a business. So if a team isn't investing in you, whether that's draft capital or what you would consider to be a good signing bonus, then don't go, because they haven't invested in you well enough. And if they stay, the pitch is, if you stay at Nebraska, they will develop you into a better player that then will get that investment from teams. So they caution their guys, if you're getting taken in the 17th round, you can be signed for $40,000. Like, yeah, you'd be a pro technically, and that's a dream achieved, but teams didn't put much into you. And so they won't hesitate from moving on from you if things don't work out. So I think that's kind of where that goes. I know education is important for his family and for Cade himself at Nebraska. So it feels to me like he might be back for another year, but we'll see. The other current player who is really interesting is Jackson Hallmark. He's a guy who got his degree in May. He was the center fielder for them all year. As I was looking back on some of the numbers from the year, I was surprised to see that he actually led Nebraska in home runs this year. I mean, he was a guy who kind of told me during the year, like, yeah, I thought when I began college, I was under the delusion that I was a home run hitter. And under Will Bolt has become a really quality bunter, stolen base threat, things like that. But he actually had some power too. And he was right up there in average. He hit well above 300. So he's a guy, I wonder, will he get drafted? And if he doesn't, he still, I think, could go kind of that Aaron Polinsky route from last year where, he could say, hey, I've been here for 4 years. I feel like I've done what I can here, and now it's time to hit the pro ranks. To me, if anybody else other than Schwellenbach goes, I would feel like it might be Hallmark as a guy who just has done a lot here. It feels like he might be ready for that jump. Obviously, Nebraska would love to have him back for 1 more year, and he'd be, a staple in their outfield at a position in the outfield that would be totally starting over if he doesn't come back. But we'll see with him. And then, for the first time in 4 or 5 years now, Nebraska has to watch how some of its recruits do as well. I mean, Drew Christo from Elkhorn, the right-handed pitcher, and then Chase Mason, an outfielder and right-handed pitcher from South Dakota, would be the top 2 guys. And they both participated in the MLB pre-draft combine in North Carolina last month, and they only invite about 200 college or high school prospects to that event. So those are two other guys to watch, and they both, similar to Povich and Hallmark, they have certain numbers financially in mind that teams are going to have to hit, and if they don't hit that, then you might not see them get drafted at all. I mean, Spencer Schwellenbach was a good example of that 3 years ago out of Michigan. He had a certain standard. I think it was in the top 5 or somewhere in that range. He wasn't taken in that range. And then eventually a team took a flyer on them, like the 33rd round or something like that. So that's something to keep in mind with Christo and Mason, is if they don't get drafted or if they go late, that's not necessarily a reflection of their actual talent. It's just that teams understand that they have a small chance of getting them if they don't pay them, a high-end signing bonus type of money. So, if a guy like Christo and Mason both make it, I mean, those are guys that can contribute right away next year, just like Bryce Matthews and Max Anderson did this year for Nebraska. Christo, he could be right in the rotation mix right away. Chase Mason, as I said, outfield is totally starting over. He has the athletic ability, both in speed and power, to be an impact bat for Nebraska pretty quickly. And he's a guy who is a multi-sport athlete who is really raw. And you put him in with those coaches, Will Bolton, that staff, and they can develop that into a more refined approach. I mean, that's a guy who could be a really high pick in 3 years. So I guess when I look at it overall, those are the 4 guys that really will shape what Nebraska can be next year. And you have other guys too who will probably sign as undrafted free agents, Luke Roskam, Chance Roach, whose eligibility has expired. But those 4 guys are really the ones, to me, that if you get them back next year and you bring in the rest of that recruiting class and maybe you add a transfer or two, I think Nebraska's drop-off with losing Schwellenbach probably won't be nearly as steep as what it might seem.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think many years ago, a guy like Roach might have been more palatable because he's really good at getting outs, which is kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
But I think the thought process is today, the way these guys lift and the way these guys swing and what they're swinging to do, Chance Roach's offerings will be knocked out of the park from a lot of different angles. Whereas in college, maybe he could get away with a pitch, turning into a ground ball in Major League Baseball, which I find fascinating to watch these at-bats anymore. These guys can hit home runs from almost anywhere. Like, it doesn't have to be the fat, belt high cheese. It can be anywhere. Like, it can be anywhere in the strike zone and actually out of the strike zone too. They're so strong, they're so fit, and they're so big that it's just easy for them to muscle the ball wherever it needs to go.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, what Roach can do is refine that sinker ball a little bit more because, if everybody's doing one thing and that's getting the strikeout as a pitcher, mid-90s, power fastball sort of deals, like it's not the worst thing in the world to kind of go the other way. And if you can generate some soft contact and get some quick outs that way, there's value in that. It doesn't mean you probably don't have the potential to be an ace, but you can make a living in pro ball.
No question. Getting
some ground balls, keeping your defense on your toes and that sort of thing. So that to me is the thing. Like, he's not going to overpower a lot of guys, but he put it well when I talked to him a month or so ago, saying he wants to be that guy who a batter makes an out and says, how did I not hit that out of the park against that guy? Mm-hmm. How did that not happen? How did I just, get on top of that thing and ground it or roll over to second base or whatever? So I think he could have a pro career. Again, he's an older guy. He doesn't have any eligibility left. So the odds of him getting drafted are almost none, but I do think he'll sign with somebody. And, you never know. A guy who has, again, a different sort of approach than a lot of other prospects. Sometimes those guys work out too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think he's got a shot. I just wonder if major league teams will take a chance on him. That somebody will give him an opportunity. He strikes me as the kind of guy that's going to get up to AAA, and then it's just going to be a battle.
Maybe, yeah.
A battle to get to get to the big club, because there's just a sense of, look, if you know, this guy's going to hit it out no matter where you throw it. So you have to be able to throw it really hard to get it by him, or otherwise he'll just knock it out.